Hi everyone, we're here with Joellen from GovHR. Today we'll be discussing the search for the next city manager. We're just going to wait a minute to see if anyone else logs on and give our residents a chance to get on and join our conversation. So if you have questions, comments, or any concerns you'd like to share regarding search for the city manager, please put those in the comments below, and we'll be asking Joellen throughout our conversation your questions so that you can be engaged in this process as well. So thank you for joining us, Joellen. So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about GovHR and why you're here?
Sure. So GovHR is a recruitment and staffing firm, as well as a company that does consulting for local governments. So we responded to a request for proposals with the proposal to do the search for city manager. We work all over the United States. I think now we're in 27 states that we've done these types of searches. And I came and interviewed with the city council, and they asked me to conduct the search for the city manager.
Okay, so what are you doing here today?
So I actually arrived yesterday. I arrived yesterday afternoon, and I met with some members of the city council for individual meetings. And then today I met with additional members of the city council, mayor, as well as the management team, the members of the union presidents and leadership there, and with the acting city manager. And the purpose of those meetings was to talk with people about who is this person that the city's seeking. You know, what characteristics and traits does that individual possess, as well as any opportunities or challenges that he or she may face upon commencing employment later this year.
Great. So again, we'll just remind everyone as you're tuning in, if you have any questions for Joellen, please feel free to post them in the comments, and we will be asking her throughout our conversation. So moving on, you came into town yesterday, you've talked to some people, so you'll go to council tonight and kind of set the tone moving forward. What would be the general timeline for that?
Depending on what the council would like to do, we will probably advertise for the position in a few weeks. And then once the advertisement occurs, it's about 3 months until a candidate would be named. And what happens in between there is there's a period of time where the position is advertised, usually about a month, and then we go through a comprehensive vetting process of the people that do apply for the job that we feel meet the profile that has been developed for the city. And that takes several weeks. It includes me interviewing the candidates to see how they meet the profile. It includes background screening, social media screening, print screening, and then I will bring those people to the city council for consideration, and then after that they'll decide who they would like to bring in for interviews and go through an interview process.
So when you're putting out the search, how do you reach someone in Los Angeles, California?
So we recommend that the city cast a very wide net, and you say Los Angeles, there could be someone in Los Angeles that's from Newark or the surrounding area that wants to come home. So we will use traditional sources. We will use the professional associations for city managers, both locally and internationally. The international is primarily in the United States, but it's called the International City and County Management Association. We will advertise through social media very extensively. We do a lot on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We will also call potential candidates. My firm has 26 consultants, so every week we publish the searches that we're working on and the candidates we're considering. So working with my own team, we can identify additional people that we may want to target. In addition to that, we subscribe to email databases that push out thousands of emails directly to potential candidates' inboxes where they may see the position profile and be interested in it, or we will ask them to send it to someone else they think may be interested in it. So it's pretty extensive outreach.
Great. So now we're going to start taking questions from you. Thank you all for tuning in. Our first question from the public was how it's advertised. So we just covered that. So please continue to send your comments and questions for Joellen, and we will continue this conversation with you guys, and we want you to be as involved as possible. So for anyone tuning into the City Council meeting tonight, what can they expect in terms of the conversation? What kind of conversation do you have with Council tonight to set that timeline?
So I've heard from members of the council as well as the other individuals that I spoke with, so I have some observations that I'll share with council tonight about the timeline I'm recommending for them, and we will talk about that timeline. So depending on their feedback, I might modify it, but I will present that to them with some recommendations on additional outreach as well as community involvement later in the process, and we'll have that discussion and see what they would like me to do further.
So obviously tonight council will make that decision on community involvement, much like we're doing now. What are different options other cities have used to reach out to their communities?
So we've in the past used dedicated email, which I will recommend for the city. We've done surveys to the community and to employees to get some feedback. When the interview process starts, we've done community forums or meet and greets. Sometimes there can be some community panels involved. We like to recommend that any of the candidates have a tour of the city so they really can see everything, you know, with people that know a lot about the city. So there's lots of different ways that people can stay engaged, and this is another really good one too, for people to see it live and give some feedback as well.
So with that tour, how do you choose what's important in a city and what you really need to sell to a candidate who wants to not only work here, but live here and raise a family here?
So I usually leave that up to the city. I'm not going to showcase the city. You know, I think the city wants to show put its best foot forward. But I think a lot of times candidates are interested in the different city facilities. They might be interested in the educational facilities, all the amenities, the Main Street areas or areas, you know, where there is opportunity to have, you know, restaurants and things of that nature. So it could also include projects that are upcoming that, you know, are important in the community. You know, there's a lot of infrastructure issues here, so maybe some of that could be on the tour. So it's just important for the city to kind of put together a couple of people that can bring the candidates around individually, let them ask questions and show them, you know, different things in the city.
Thank you all for tuning in again. I will remind you, please continue to submit your questions and your comments below, and we will ask Joellen throughout our conversation. So our next question from you guys will be, does our candidate have to live in the city? So say someone is coming from Los Angeles, California, as we mentioned previously, can they move to there, or do they have to live in Newark?
So the charter residency is required. My understanding is that if there were extenuating circumstances, the city council could consider waiving the requirement. But I think, you know, if somebody was coming from our dictation, I would think
from there.
So it will take, from the time we advertise, about 3 months. So it just depends on what we would do before we advertise, and so that could happen in the next few weeks. So if we advertise in mid-March, we should be done by June.
And how would you say, you know, we'll just go back, for example, if someone was moving from California, how long do you normally think that transition time takes? Even if we were to hire someone in June, do you think that they would be able to be here at a shorter period of time? What is, just right, from your experience?
So there's lots of variables with that. Sometimes someone has to give notice with their current employer. The standard is 30 days. Sometimes that can be waived or it could be sooner. And then, of course, if they're moving, they need some time to relocate. So if somebody's coming from another state and is going to require relocation, we usually see it to be anywhere between 45 and 60 days.
Great. So our next question from the public is, what is the cost associated with all of this?
So the cost should be no more than $25,000. There was the basic proposal, and then there are additional costs, but those are variable. If candidates are being brought in from other parts of the country, then those costs will be added on. So it really, that should be the high limit.
Okay. We'll remind all of you to please continue to submit your questions. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns with Joellen about the city manager process, to please submit ahead of tonight's council meeting when she will be talking with council about the next steps moving forward. So let's just backtrack a little bit for those who tuned in a few minutes after we started. Just the process from the beginning. So when you came to City Council, what was your original pitch of how to find us the best city manager possible?
Well, I think that our firm, GovHR, we spend a lot of time on developing the profile up front and making sure it really reflects what the community is looking for in the candidates. And then our outreach. Our outreach is superior. We work really, really hard to make sure that we're matching the candidates, to the profile. So we spend a lot of time doing all that work up front. That's why from the time that the position is advertised to the time I actually come back and present candidates is 7 to 8 weeks, because we need that lead time for people to be able to apply, or for people to tell other people about the job, or for us to reach out to people. And then the vetting process is very important. And I feel that the candidates that we bring in for consideration of the council have been thoroughly vetted. We know that they closely match the profile, and we have checked thoroughly into their backgrounds.
So when you say you reach out to people directly, how do you find these people?
So I myself worked in local government for many years, and I've served my profession nationally, so I have many contacts in many states. And as I mentioned, we have 26 consultants that work with us, maybe 27 now, and so we talk, and some of our consultants are in other states. We have people in Florida, in Michigan, in Illinois, in Wisconsin, in Arizona. So we are located in different parts of the country, and we're doing searches in different parts of the country. So sometimes there might be a regional focus to a search, but we have a consultant covering that region, and once they get to know some candidates, then they may be aware of someone who may be interested in this search. So we talk with each other, and then we do our own outreach by calling people that we know in particular areas, seeing if they're interested, sending them emails, and just continuing to reach out to make sure that we're contacting as many people as possible.
Great. So our next question from the public: if someone comes, say from across the country, do the relocation costs get kind of grouped into the costs for the entire search? Does the city then cover the relocation?
So that's usually negotiable. That would be in the offer. So if an offer is made to a candidate with the salary, a lot of times relocation costs are requested, and that would be something for the city council to consider. But I can advise them on what's appropriate, and what we see as far as how much money that should entail.
So hypothetically speaking, if we go through this entire process and there are candidates, but the council does not reach a consensus, what would happen at that point?
Well, hopefully that won't happen. We're working hard up front to get input from people to really paint a picture of who this person is. And, my hope would be that the city council interview several people, and that they can find consensus with an individual. If for some reason they cannot find consensus, then we will advertise again, and we'll stay with it until they do find that right candidate.
Great. We thank you all for tuning in. Please continue to submit your questions and comments for Joellen, and we will loop those questions in during our conversation. So the next question is, what role will the businesses and the residents play in this search?
So I'm not quite certain yet. I think one of the things that we'll be talking about tonight is exactly that, is the process and who will be involved in the process and when. So if there will be more ability for people to give some feedback right now while we're developing the profile, versus being involved in the process when the candidates are being interviewed and met and meet and greet, those types of things. So I don't know that yet, and that's something we'll be talking about tonight.
Okay. And this is just one of the ways moving forward that you'll be able to have a voice in this conversation for the search for the next city manager. For those of you who are unaware, Joellen is in town to meet with City Council tonight. Tonight's City Council meeting begins at 7 o'clock, and she is at the end of the agenda to discuss with Council what they want to see in the next city manager and the steps moving forward. So we also want to hear from all of you. Please continue to submit your questions and comments so that we can pass them on to Joellen and hear from you moving forward. So the meeting now is just about a half hour away. and just walk them through, if they're tuning in on our live stream tonight, which the public can do, or attending the meeting, what can they expect to get out of this meeting?
So I'm not exactly certain everything we're going to cover. What I would like to talk with the city council about is kind of some of the things that I've heard over the past day and a half, as well as talk with them about the recruitment schedule and get their reaction to what I'm thinking they might want to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I've got some other material that has to do with outreach to the public that I'd like to review as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be hopefully the two outcomes, the outreach and the schedule.
So if they approve that schedule, when will be that next step in your example?
If they approve the schedule, then there'll be some additional work up front starting next week.
Okay. And then when can people expect to see that posting? If your schedule would go through?
I would work with the communications staff. That will be something that will be important for me, to have the assistance of the city staff to help disseminate information. So I would work with the staff to make sure that we have the appropriate press releases and information that we want to disseminate, but it should be within, the earliest would be next week. The latest would be next week, early next week.
Wonderful. And we'd like to remind you once again, before we wrap up, to please continue sending your questions. And if you have any other questions for Joellen, or you're watching this video after we wrap up the live stream, please continue to post in the comments, and any of your questions, comments, or concerns will then be passed on to Joellen as we move forward. Is there anything you think is important to note before we wrap up?
Just that it is a fluid process, and I think if residents and other stakeholders of the community want to communicate with the city council members as far as their expectations, I think that will be important. We will set up the dedicated email, the newark@govhrusa.com, so people can email at any time, whether they have feedback, questions, and I will respond to those on behalf of the city. So we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to give input and to be aware of everything that's happening in the process.
Okay, wonderful. So we do look like we have one or two more questions that we'll take for Joellen before we wrap up. But just a reminder, if you'd like after this live stream to after this live Facebook, hop over to our live stream account and watch tonight's city council meeting that begins at 7 o'clock. And Joellen is on the agenda this evening to discuss this process with City Council. She is later in the agenda, so you'll be able to tune in and see everything else going on with the city this evening as well. So one more question from the audience. What main qualifications are you looking for?
So there's many qualifications. Generally, what I know that will be advertised is educational qualifications, and that would be a minimum of a bachelor's degree in public administration or a related field. A master's degree in public administration or related field would be preferred, and that's really the norm for people that are actually serving as city managers in other parts of the country. Other things that we're going to look at is the skill set that the individual will need to possess. So it could range from financial skills, from consensus building skills, from negotiation skills, because there's collective bargaining units here, a variety of different skills. So working with the city council, so that's what I'm learning now. I'm learning exactly what skills the stakeholders want the new manager to possess. In addition to that, we will be highlighting challenges and opportunities that the community faces right now. So when I am looking at the candidates, I'm trying to match their past experience with some of the issues that the city is dealing with now, and that will also, ensure a good fit. So until all of those are determined, then once I have that information, I can continue to look for candidates that will be able to help the city meet those challenges and opportunities.
So going off of that question, we also have another question from the public. Do you think that minimum qualifications are too stringent?
No, I think I've checked the charter, and I'll have to confirm it again to make sure that there is no specific charter requirement for the education and experience. And if that's the case, then we would advertise for an equivalent combination. So, for example, there could be somebody who's a retired military person who ran a base that wants to get into city management, and there's some very close parallels there. So that person may not possess an actual degree in public administration, may not have a master's degree, may have a master's degree. So it just depends. If their experience in totality meets the minimum, then they can be considered for the job. So they're going to have experience, you know, in some form or another that can transfer in to running a city. So the educational requirement, the minimum of a bachelor's degree, is important. But if for some reason they've been doing work for 20 or 30 years, and we can look at the totality of the experience, then they could be qualified too.
So we're going to wrap up shortly so that we can prepare for tonight's City Council meeting. But another reminder that if you have any more questions, comments, or concerns, or if you think of anything moving forward, Joellen will be setting up a separate email address just for your questions, comments, or concerns. That will be newark@govhrusa.com. You can also leave those comments in the comment section of this live video, and we will pass those on to Joellen. So another reminder, she'll be at the council meeting this evening. Council begins at 7 o'clock, and you can watch it on our live stream. And if any questions come up after you see Joellen speak with City Council and they make their decisions moving forward, please feel free to reach out on any of our platforms with your questions. So thank you so much, Joellen, for being here, and we look forward to seeing you this evening with City Council.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will continue to have these open conversations throughout the process on a number of topics going on in the city of Newark. Have a wonderful evening.
Moving on to item 11A3. Joellen, if you would please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I did pass out some information for you to consider this evening, and hopefully the outcomes that we'll have is approval of a recruitment schedule and also some information for additional feedback from the community via some surveys before the profile for the position of city manager is completed. So if you'd like, I can go through the process as far as the schedule is concerned.
That'd be a good idea.
Okay. So if you pull out it's a one-page piece of paper. It says City of Newark City Manager Recruitment Schedule. So today is February 12th, and I was here yesterday and today getting some input and feedback from members of the City Council, city staff, about the position. And I talked about questions relative to the characteristics and traits that you're looking for in the individual, as well as opportunities and challenges that he or she may face upon commencing employment. So I'm gathering information about that, and I will start to develop the profile. One of the things that I heard from you was your desire to have a very transparent process. So in that spirit, what you also have in front of you is 2 surveys that you can consider making available to the public pretty much immediately. And if you look at the schedule, what I'm recommending here is distributing these surveys to the public, or it's a community survey and an employee survey that can be completed via the SurveyMonkey tool that will come back to me for some additional input. So the questions that are on the survey relate, again, to the characteristics and traits for the individual you're seeking, as well as opportunities and challenges. So I did speak with the city staff today, and not everyone may have the ability, especially in the community, to respond electronically. So they can work to make sure that there's paper copies available as well, so people can provide input that way. So to try and help you with that desire to be transparent, rather than finish the profile in the next few days and make send it back to you to look at the text and approve, I think this interim step might be good to just make sure that you're getting it out to the community. So if you do that, we just have to delay posting the job till the beginning of March rather than next week or so. So that's the first thing for you to think about. If you do that, what I would do then is recommend that you cut off the day, March 5th. And then I know that in speaking with Renee earlier today, your packet materials need to be available on March 5th. So if I have the information from the SurveyMonkey, I would have to send it to you on the 6th or the 7th, along with the profile, just to make sure that I can aggregate any additional information into the profile. So I have that date on there as well. So you'll have it before your meeting on the 12th, but it won't be on in your packet on the 5th. You'll get it on the 6th or the 7th. And then the idea would be on the 12th of March, you would approve the recruitment profile. I would also give you the recommended places I think you should advertise the position. So the outcome for the meeting on the 12th would be, yes, this is where we want to advertise, and you're okay with the profile. And if you have any edits, you can let me know before the 12th. I can make those, but the idea would be on the 12th you would approve the profile. We would then advertise it right after that and receive resumes in mid-April. The deadline would be April 20th. I would then have the opportunity to start to vet candidates. You know, as I mentioned in the interview before you brought me on as your consultant, that would include Skype interviews. It would include preliminary background screening with print media, with social media, and just all of that background vetting. I would then submit a recruitment report to you on May 17th, and then after that, we would start talking about candidates you want to interview and go through the interview process. So if I can submit the profile to you, the recruitment report, I mean, on May 17th, I can come out the next week and go through in detail the candidate credentials with you, at which time you would choose the people you want to interview as semifinalists. And the review of the candidates' credentials and your first round interviews would be an executive session, okay? I thought a little bit about interview process, and I think, again, in order for you to ensure some transparency with the community, I think, and if these dates work, you know, we might have to move the dates around a little bit, but if we did have those first round interviews the week of June 4th, then right after that you can name your finalists, and then the next week you can have a community process. So the community would have about a week to know who the finalists are. So if they wanted to do their own, you know, looking as to who they are, they'll have a little bit of time. And then what I recommend the week of June 11th would be to do multiple things. And we don't have to actually decide exactly what you want to do tonight, but it could include several things. One would be a community forum where the finalist candidates come, and we would come up with some questions that we would ask, the same questions of each candidate, and people could attend that and listen to the responses. And once the questions are asked, the candidates could then remain, and any residents or stakeholders that have an individual question can ask those through kind of a meet and greet process. So there's the piece of the public forum that's somewhat scripted, and everyone's asking or answering the same questions, and then the next part of it is kind of more open, where people can, you know, actually go up and meet the people and ask any individual questions they have. Another thing you can do is, if you want to bring together a stakeholder panel, you may all want to invite one person or maybe two people from the community to actually have an interview with the candidates. You can do that as well. You may want to have employees also make up a stakeholder panel. So that's something else to think about. In addition to that, you could give the finalists a tour of the community, and that could be given by maybe somebody, you know, like from the chamber, or you could have staff do that. But again, it's a way for the candidates to kind of get out and see the community, and, you know, some places that you might want to highlight for them. And then you would have your second interview. So that week of the 11th, the candidates would have to be here certainly more than one day. It would be, you know, interviews, a community forum, and then the second interviews with you, after which you can deliberate and and think about making an offer to a candidate. And those deliberations would also be in executive session, because you were going to be talking about the candidate credentials and who you might want to offer a job to. And if you go through this process, you would be able to name or make an offer to somebody in mid-June, have that negotiated, and depending on where the person is, if they're local or if they have to move here, then that would dictate when they could actually commence employment. So that's kind of the schedule I came up with. I do have those Survey Monkeys for you to take a look at, and just a couple of things too I've been thinking about. The good thing about this is the election will have already occurred, so when I would be coming back to present candidates, whoever is going to be any new members of the council will be able to be here for that. But in the meantime, you may want to think about giving the Survey Monkey for the community members to those people who are running, just so they can give some input at this point too. We are setting up a dedicated email for the search. It's newark@govhrusa.com, so anybody can email me at any time during the search with any information or questions that they have as well.
Can you repeat that, please?
It's
Newark?
Newark at govhrusa.com.
Okay.
And I email my staff, it should be up in the next day or two if it's not already available. So if anybody sends an email and it doesn't go through, it's just because it's not active yet. But it will be. And the other thing too, I will want to work with your staff a little bit, so I just want you to know that, and as far as disseminating information from the communication side. So press releases and things of that nature, making sure that whatever you decide is getting out. I have to talk to the staff today, and it could be drafted, we could review it, we'll work with Renee, to make sure that information is getting out timely, so people, know exactly what's going on with the search. That's just a quick overview.
All right, so essentially what you need us to focus on this evening is doing a survey, utilizing the questions that you have shared with us, and most of us, I believe, met with you with regards to giving you information on the profile. So you're comfortable with the information you have there, do you think, for the most part?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
All right, so let's discuss the survey. I'll begin with Councilman Moorhead, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have a problem with the surveys, but I am keenly aware of the folks that don't do anything with SurveyMonkey and how these would be announced. So I would propose that we take out an article or an advertisement or something in the Newark Post that these exist, and you can come to City Hall and get them and do them that way. As well as I would like to see on the city's website, one of the major, I don't know what you call those things.
Banners.
Banner, okay. One of the central banners is that we're looking at a city manager, doing a city manager search, and we're asking for the community's input. And then I can assume you could take care of the employee piece internally with a flash email or something. So that would be my request.
The other, just to piggyback what you're saying, Joellen and I talked today about leaving the surveys at the Newark Senior Center, for example, and other key locations in the community where they can be filled out.
Sure, that'd be great. Have them spread around town, and then people bring them back here, or what would the proposal be?
Well, yeah, you'll have to figure out a process on how you're going to get them back.
Yeah, generally they could be collected, and then the staff can just pick them up at some point. So that's fine, and you can, or
Okay.
somebody can bring them over here, whatever's easier.
At that point, I'd like a question added, if they're going to be in the general public, where are you? Where do you live? Because a lot of folks go to the New York Senior Center that don't necessarily live in town.
That's correct.
So,
Is there a spot for,
and not that they don't get a,
whether, it does say whether they're a resident, right?
Well, the question 9 is optional, because people may or may not want to answer the question, but is in which council district do you reside or work? And then question 10 is how long have you lived or worked in the city. Because the community survey, the idea behind it, it would be any stakeholder. So you could have
Sure.
members of the business community as well, who may or may not reside in the
Yeah,
community.
I stand corrected. You're right.
So at item one,
Okay.
they could check that they're a resident, but could we put non-resident or live outside the city limits or put a zip code or something? I don't know.
We can put
Yep.
non-resident and then non-resident right after that.
Okay.
Okay, I can add that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilman Chapman?
No questions.
Councilwoman Wallace?
Thank you. Just piggybacking on Councilman Moorhead, I think we should also send this out through Inform Me. So,
Yes.
Good idea.
yeah.
Yes.
That there, you can do the survey online, and then you can pick up the mailed or the printed forms at various locations. Do have a question or just some discussion about the recruitment schedule. Do we think that, so I'm looking at week of March 6th or 7th. The draft position will be presented to council, I guess, in our packets, and then we will vote on that on the 12th. That's what's being presented here? Okay.
Is that enough time?
My question is, are we confident enough that, is there a step missing here? And that we give feedback, we've all had our individual sessions, but are we in enough agreement that we're not going to have major changes and this needs to come back again for another vote? That's my question. Are we missing a step?
Generally, what I will do for my clients is I email you the text. So what you'll get is the text, and you can read that, and if you have edits, you can get back
Right,
to
but
me.
we need to discuss it as a body and make changes as a body at that point, is what I think. I don't think, once we get it in our packet, I don't think we should be emailing you to make changes. I think we need to wait as a body and agree upon it.
That's typically how we've done things.
Yes, so, and that would be fully transparent, which is what we're saying we want to do, so.
Not to add more time, but I'm gone on that meeting.
On the
That's-
12th?
That's the one I'm going to miss this year. Yep.
So if we needed to discuss it, Joellen, first of all, I am not convinced that 5 days is enough for all of us to review it to begin with.
Great.
Yeah.
And if we need to have a discussion at the table prior to, we may need to see you twice, is what we're trying to say on the profile.
Allow your new counsel to do the final for the position announcement. If you delay it past March 12th, it's the next council. Well, there's one more meeting, but
Well, we usually cancel that.
Well, no.
No.
There's-
that meeting we wouldn't cancel, but if you're going to delay it 2 weeks, delay it 5, 6.
Do you have any recommendations, Renee?
Well, I will say, in talking with Joellen, dates here, there were a couple things that we took into consideration. One, being trying to complete the actual position announcement and posting of the position prior to the election. So that election period could be the time when the position's out there, resumes are coming in, the review is starting by GovHR. So a time where we wouldn't have meetings and where council would be in transition would still be a productive time. The other piece of this was looking to schedule the interview piece and the decision-making piece and have it not conflict directly with the referendum that you guys have scheduled on June 19th. So, and also in trying to complete the bulk of this before the summer season starts and people are on vacation and things of that nature. So trying to avoid what I think council has expressed in the past of being concerned about, having less public participation during the interview process and the part where the actual candidates are out front, because folks aren't paying attention because it's the summer. So that was kind of the thought behind the schedule that's been laid out here. The reality of the schedule right now is we are going to be missing at least one council member for every meeting between March 12th and May 14th. So there is not going to be a meeting where there is a full council to consider these things.
Okay. Thank you.
So I guess then the worst case scenario would be we come back here on the 12th, we are a mess and we're not in agreement and we have to change the schedule. But, I guess we could deal with that at that point.
One option would be for me to send you the text for your second meeting in February, where I would write it based on what I know now. And then, because if you look at the profiles that I've sent you as examples, there's a lot of background information about the city, about the history, about just everything about the community. So that, regardless of what the employees and the community say, that shouldn't change. The sections that could change would be the style and the challenges and opportunities. So one option would be I go back now, write it, and say, okay, here's a draft, and then you can react to that and give me your feedback after your public meeting. And then if it has to be edited based on the additional feedback I receive, I can just add a few things in those particular sections, and then you'd be able to look at it again on the 12th and say, okay, nothing really changed based on the feedback, or there's a few other things that she added. And that would give you
yeah.
more time.
That's a really good idea. So bring us the first draft February 26th for our agenda.
Right, okay.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. And yeah, and maybe we'll all be in complete agreement on the 12th, so that might happen.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay,
is there
that's it.
anything furthermore you need from us at this point?
No, I think just keeping these dates in mind, and then I can work with Renee on actual days that, because, and I'll tell you why it's important to nail it down now. When I start to talk with candidates about the potential candidates, I tell them when the interviews are going to be held. So while it doesn't have to be etched in stone tonight, it does need to be by the time I start reviewing those resumes, because we want it to continue to flow. If I come back out here in May to present candidates and we don't have a schedule, I can probably put money on the fact that we're not going to get dates at that point, because everybody's busy and you all have a lot of things going on. So that would be the only thing I would recommend, is that, look at these, and then just, I can work with Renee on about how much time we would need if you like this kind of process, and then we can get some things on the calendar.
Your Honor, there
Yes.
is another half of the dais that hasn't had a chance to speak.
I'm going to let you do that now.
Okay.
All right, that sounds like a good suggestion. Anyone else at the table wish to share their thoughts?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
on the survey, this may sound picky, but we're not Delaware, we're Delaware.
Oh, all right, I just have to say one thing. The person that helps me with the Survey Monkey picked up her children today, had to bring them to the dentist, and she was sick. So I said, I think I can edit this, and I don't know how to do the spell check. So we will make sure it's perfect.
Okay,
So,
but if you look right above it, it's Delaware,
okay, all right, no, I'll definitely.
So, on the survey, how do you weed out duplicates or, things that don't happen, like stuffing the ballot box with somebody decides that they want to have their opinion stated over and over? Because then you end up with a weighting that's not true.
Right, I'd have to ask somebody about how that works, and if you can actually track back to where it's being completed. I mean, everything, which I forgot to mention, will come to me directly. So especially for employees, they should know that I'm the only one that's going to see any of the responses that they write
Well,
down.
employees is easier because you can use SurveyMonkey and you can track a unique ID that's only used once. That's not going to be the case if you just have a piece of paper. So,
That's true, and I don't really know how.
so I don't know if you have
if
statistics
somebody-
that you can look at the outliers or, things are surely skewed one direction or another. You don't have to answer tonight,
Okay,
but think about that.
okay, sure,
Okay?
sure.
That's the computer guy in me coming out saying, looking at that. And on the schedule, I am not available that week of June 4th. I am gone the 2nd through the 10th and back in time for the 11th council meeting.
Slacker.
Scheduled it around the council meeting.
You want a vacation too?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else at the dais?
Your Honor,
Go ahead, Councilman Clifton.
what I'm hearing, Joellen, is you're going to be the single point of contact. Everything, as far as surveys are concerned, it's going to come to you only, and you'll compile it to come back to council as a
Yeah.
body.
Yes, and what I will give you on March 6th or 7th, because we're going to close it on the 5th,
Right,
is there's some nice graphs that come as a result of, you can pull out of the SurveyMonkey. So I will give you a cover sheet and then some data, so you can just see what the community and the employees said.
okay. And I agree with the changes that were recommended prior. One other question. You talked about bringing the 10 or 12 candidate profiles here. Will we be seeing the profile prior to you coming in? In other words, I guess what I'm asking, it sounded to me like you're saying you're going to walk in and hand us 12 packets of the top candidates, and then we're going to discuss the qualifications at that point without having the ability to read it prior to that.
So I will send them to you on May 17th. That means you'll have them on May 17th, and then I'm suggesting I come the following week. So you should have, that's a Thursday, so if they arrive on Thursday, you'll have the weekend to go through all the materials, and then it just depends on whatever day you want me to come out the following week.
Okay. And will we be apprised of all candidates that have applied?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Hamilton?
Thank you. How did the live feed go?
I don't have the statistics, I know that.
I have them. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
If I remember my password.
Joellen, while we're waiting, could you put the fact, you said that the responses will come to you. Could you put some verbiage on each of these that they would come in confidence directly to the consultant or whatever you'd like to call yourself, and, not, particularly in the case of the employee, not come to staff, something like
Right,
that.
I'll put that on the employee survey. I don't know
Yeah.
if the community
The
minds.
community one, if you're going to have them sitting at establishments, that's going to kind of be hard to do.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. No, I
So
get it.
employee would work, though, yeah.
And I did mention to the union representatives that I met today that as a result of what I was hearing, that I was going to recommend this to you, and I encouraged them that if you wanted to do this, that they encourage their employees to fill it out.
I just think it should say that on there.
All right, go ahead, Tom.
All right, so I'll give you stats for two items. The video that was shared last week promoting today's event was viewed 3,500 times and reached nearly 5,000 people as of first thing this morning. The event this evening had 239 views, reached 550 people, had 40 reactions, and at peak 22 people watching at one time. So pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
All right, anyone from the audience wish to share their thoughts? Amy Rowe?
Thank you, Amy Rowe. I live in District 4. A couple of thoughts here.
A week isn't enough time for the community to know who the finalist is. A week is just not enough. And you'll get a lot of pushback from that, I can guarantee it. Listing the council district on the survey, in my experience, nobody really knows what their council district is unless they acutely follow city affairs. So some direction on that is going to have to be, or else it's going to be meaningless. But most importantly, did I hear correctly that everybody up here had individual sessions with the consultant? Because it's my understanding that that is a direct violation of the Freedom of Information Act, and you are a public body, and you are supposed to be meeting as a quorum, not individually. Is that still a quorum?
Before we're scolded, I didn't.
Thank you. It's still a quorum. 6 out of 7 is still a quorum, though. And I heard a lot of people say tonight up here that transparency was a priority and that you wanted to be fully transparent, but individual meetings with a consultant about hiring a city manager that you want to be transparent is not transparent. And so already I see a big ding on this process that makes me very unhappy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else from the audience wish to share their thoughts? All right, I will bring it back to the table. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Question. Does council want to address the timeline with the first round of interviews since Councilman Markham will be out of town?
I think it's reasonable to assume that at any given time, at any given week, there's going to be the likelihood of at least one council member not being present at some part of this process. And that's a shame, but a reality. I think we're going to do anything to the schedule, we'd probably want to give council more time to review the candidates prior to the decision on finalists, and more time for the public to review the final candidates than a week as well.
I do believe that it's important that we have everybody here for the second interviews. I mean, this has been 8 months already. We're just getting started, so I think it's important that everybody's here. Would it be wise, Joellen, that we confirm a date with you at the either at the February 26th meeting or the March 12th meeting
Yes.
for the second interviews?
Yes, I will, well,
And-
I think,
The first
the
interviews
first
are the
interview
issue.
was the conflict.
Oh, I thought it was the second interviews.
It's the first
No, the
interview.
first one.
I apologize. I
So
thought you were gone in June,
June
Councilman Markham.
2nd to 10th.
Yeah, the week of June 4th, I will not be here, which is the first set of interviews.
2 out of 3 candidates for District 5 are in the room tonight, so take these calendars with you and mark your, hold everything, just in case.
I had an earlier version, so I apologize for the error on the date.
Your Honor, I would like to be present, and I think it's not unusual for council people to ask that meetings be scheduled so that they can be present.
May I offer a suggestion? Would a reasonable approach be to make the first interviews with City Council the week of June 11th instead of June 4th? And then move back the community forum, meet and greet stakeholder panel, and second interviews to the week of June 25th. That way, it would give 2 weeks for the public to know who the finalists are, as well as avoiding the week of the referendum and completing the process before the 4th of July holiday.
And I have to look at that because I might be in another place too. So
Okay.
we all have to communicate.
Yeah, we don't
It
have
doesn't
to
mean I
decide
can't be in
tonight.
2 different places the same week, but I just.
So let's come back February 26th with the revised calendar. How about that?
Okay, okay.
All right, any further discussion from the table? Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being here the last couple of days, actually.
Okay.
And we'll see you on the 26th. Or at least we'll have the information on the
Right,
26th, on the
right.
on the first
I
draft.
wasn't going to come back on the 20th.
Yeah, we'll get the first draft profile.
Okay, all right,
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.